Hello and welcome to the next video in the ITF series where we meet the ITF partners. And today I'd like to welcome Kylie Tan from Mosaic International. Welcome, Kylie. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Good to see you.
Pleasure. Kylie, let's start with just a little background about yourself and how Mosaic International came about.
Yeah, sure. So Mosaic was sort of my brainchild in sort of 2014, 2015. Some of your members will know me as a solicitor practicing, running around town in Sheffield, doing some commercial work. And so in 2014, 2015, I thought about starting a business that would try and leverage the experience that I have in Southeast Asia with the experience that I have here in the UK, and being from Malaysia in Southeast Asia, I thought that would be a help to businesses over here. And so that's what I did. So Mosaic was basically started out from that. My background is in the law, and I still do a bit of legal work here and there, and a lot of my time is devoted to Mosaic International.
Very good. And obviously you're here to try and develop business relationships between UK businesses and I'm guessing businesses specifically in Malaysia, Singapore, but the wider Southeast Asian area.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is an area of growth. That is an area where I think British businesses have sort of not looked at in any sort of great way. And I think there's an opportunity there if British businesses were to look to it and to explore opportunities over there. I think opportunities there exist, and you just need to look.
Yeah, and it's an interesting time to discuss opportunities because obviously, well, the whole world has gone through the COVID pandemic, and that has had a huge impact on economies around the world. But more specifically, Britain has just faced the final stages of transition with regard Brexit. So there's a lot of businesses whose minds are still dealing with how trading with Europe. How do you see that? And I know the short term is pain and disruption to a large extent, but how do you see Britain's outlook changing mid to long term with that regard?
Well, I think for British businesses who are more adventurous, I would say, more open-minded, they're going to start thinking about looking for markets and looking for suppliers and looking for resources in parts of Southeast Asia, because the pound is still pretty strong, and you can get more bang for your buck essentially when you go to that part of the world. And I think people need to it may be easy for me to say, but people need to look up, I suppose, from just focusing on the day-to-day and think strategically. And once you think strategically, it makes sense to think about a region like Southeast Asia, which we have historical links with. The British government has historical links with various countries over there, and think about, well, how do we then leverage that? How do we bring these opportunities to us so that we can exploit them? And there are businesses over there in Malaysia and Singapore, definitely, who will be more than happy to do business. The difficulty is getting past culture. And that is one of the biggest difficulty at the moment, because, we think in a particular way. If you've grown up in Britain, you think everywhere else is like Britain, but unfortunately it isn't. And likewise, if you grow up in Thailand, you think the whole world is like Thailand, but it's.
So Kylie, we're talking. Obviously, our government is looking to form better links with other parts of the world, and there's talk of joining the various trading blocs that are there in the Southeast Asia. There's the ASEAN group, and there's also talk now of the CPTPP and the RCEP trading blocs. And obviously that will give opportunities to UK businesses because of easier trading circumstances. Looking at it on a macro scale, that's got to be a good thing. But then looking at it on a micro scale, how do UK businesses go about researching and entering into some of these marketplaces?
Well, yeah, you're right to point out the CPTPP and RCEP, and I think they are both very interesting prospects. The UK has applied to join CPTPP in January of this year. That seems to be a priority for the DIT, and yes, great, go ahead and do that. There are 11 countries in there, and it includes countries like Peru, Chile, and Mexico. So it's really Pacific Rim. But it's missing some of the larger players. I would say it's missing, the likes of China, obviously the bigger player. It's missing. Korea is missing, and there's still a few countries that haven't ratified it. Malaysia, Chile, Brunei, and Peru have not ratified the CPTPP. In terms of the RCEP, it's huge. It's got all the 10 ASEAN countries. And then you've got Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, Japan, and China. That's pretty big. And you get some of potentially going to be some of the biggest economic players in a group together. And India has the option to join as well. And if India joins, that means you have 4, if you believe the predictions by World Bank and IMF, 4 of the potentially largest economies in RCEP. By 2024. So these are huge. Now, yes, all sounds great, and businesses are probably going, well, yeah, great, but what does that mean for me? Well, the practicalities are going to be huge because, as we all know, COVID has had a huge impact on the travel industry. And countries all across ASEAN currently have very strict quarantine rules, very strict rules about entering their country. And the rollout of the vaccine is way behind the West, because the West has obviously gone around and bought every single vaccine there is, in development, whereas Southeast Asia has taken a wait-and-see approach. So they're a bit behind in terms of getting the vaccine in and vaccinating their own population. So I suspect that the biggest issue that businesses will find in the short to medium term will be travel disruption, and also about prevalence of COVID in that particular country. So, do you as a senior manager, in your C-suite team, travel to a country where there's a high prevalence of COVID? Is it the risk that you can take? Will your insurance cover you? What is the cost of traveling if flights are not as often as you would like? So these are practical issues. So people like myself are there to sort of help with that, to interface and to help these businesses get into that country, not in the physical sense, but in the virtual sense, in a sense, by using connections, by using contacts, people whom I know, and contacts that I have in that part of the world. What I am is essentially I'm a bridge between a network over here in the UK and a network that's available in Southeast Asia, and I'm able to link those two separate networks together. And I think that's one way of doing it. The other way is obviously research, and paying organizations like the chambers and places like that to carry out some market research for you. But you and I know market research takes you only so far, and sometimes it's all about understanding the culture, understanding what the market really is like from a native's point of view, rather than just doing the cold hard number crunching, if you like.
Yeah, and so obviously you are well positioned to assist businesses as they look to that area for business growth. What are the sectors that are prevalent in these areas that are seeing fast growth?
Oh, that's a question. Um, I think there's a that it depends on your. I'll give you an example. It's a strange one actually. I'm actually doing something for a client in relation to coconuts. And you think coconuts? Okay, that's very interesting. But very small beer. All right. How much do a coconut cost? But there is an appreciation in the West, at least, that we're unlikely to have a normal summer. So how do you give people a taste of what summer used to be? And some of the supermarkets are thinking of bringing in these kind of products, actual coconuts, which people can buy from their shelves and take home and drink like you were by the beach. And the difficulty here is logistics. How do you deal with that? Bringing coconuts from somewhere as far away as Southeast Asia. But there's also a question of demand and supply because um, the demand is huge. And I couldn't even begin to understand how big it is until I sort of asked the question, and I suddenly realized this is a huge business. And I suppose our audience, manufacturers, will go, "What's that got to do with me?" Well, the thing is that we don't know what we don't know, and that's the reality of it. We might think, right, okay, so it's a coconut, great, big deal, but it is actually a big deal. It is actually a big deal, and I think there are various industries in Southeast Asia, and Southeast Asia is so diverse, by the way. It's like talking about the EU in one general statement. All these different countries, all these different cultures, all these different languages. Southeast Asia is exactly like that. It's so diverse, and it is a question of what are you looking for, and then us making the judgment call as to which country is the best. Now, having said all that, if you're a Brit trying to do business in Asia, the three main places you would look at: Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, because of language. English is widely spoken, especially in Singapore and Malaysia. So you will look at those three countries immediately first, and there is a sort of a comfort level in terms of doing business because there are some similar cultures in terms of business culture, similarities in terms of transactions and contracts and that sort of thing. So it gives you a bit of comfort to begin with. So yeah, so that would be my answer to that.
So, and as you say, some of the barriers to doing business is the culture and the language, and so that is an obvious advantage. Is if English is a widely spoken business language in those territories. I assume they're selling themselves as a gateway to the wider Southeast Asian market. So you are able to use Malaysia, Singapore, or indeed Hong Kong as a springboard into the other marketplaces.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. A lot of businesses look at China as obviously the big player in that region, and everyone wants to get into China, but getting into China doesn't mean setting up in China. You use Hong Kong, for example. You use Singapore or you use Malaysia. I use that particular order, for good reason, because Hong Kong is right next door. You get a large amount of the population that can speak Mandarin Chinese, which is great. And then Singapore. Now, the reason why Singapore, and if it were up to me, I would probably go to Singapore because Hong Kong is so expensive to do business. It is so expensive to hire staff. So you go to Singapore. But again, Singapore has the same issue because staff are so expensive as well. And then you start looking at Malaysia, because then you will look at Malaysia as another entry point because it's got a lower cost of living, and you can get a group of population there that speak Mandarin Chinese, to get into that market. So it's using, you're right, the word is springboard into China. You don't have to be in China to do business in China. And I think I have heard anecdotally, although I wouldn't be able to say whom, that doing business in China is complex. It's complicated. There are a lot of things that we are not familiar with, and although I might look the part, I don't even speak the language, and so I would be at a total loss in China. Full stop.
Yes, of course. Yes, it's as you say, it's a very diverse region, um, hosting many different languages and many different cultures, and it's of course understanding that diversity as well as you enter that marketplace. So I think many businesses who are able to start looking beyond Brexit and beyond EU will recognise that it is a very dynamic, a very lively, and a very exciting place to do business. And you are ideally placed as Mosaic International in order to assist businesses with their goals and their ambitions within this area.
Yeah, definitely. And people can just pick up the phone and ring me even if they're not sure. Quite happy to field inquiries, or just email me. And the thing is this: I often test an inquiry when I get one, and to see whether really there is a need to go to Southeast Asia, because oftentimes you might be able to find a supplier locally anyway. So what's the driver? And if it's cost, yes, okay, there's some cost savings in relation to that, but the complexity of then doing business overseas, is it worth the cost of doing that business? And so, I often test that, and sometimes I say, look, we can get you the savings, but is it worth your while doing it? Probably not. Now, if someone says to me, look, we have a strategic decision that we want to be in Asia because we think that that's where the growth is going to be, then really that is what that's how I can definitely help with that sort of business, because that's a bit more long-termism in terms of their thinking, in terms of where they want to be. And I think being in Asia is an amazing opportunity.
But you have to be committed to it. You have to have a long-term strategy for it in order to make it a profitable project to start on.
Very much so. This is not a sprint. I would say it's a middle distance running distance, or potentially even a marathon. Because if you look at the businesses who have been successful at making the move to Asia, and the prime example is Dyson, and the way Dyson has done it is to throw a whole lot of money at it, like moving their operations across, moving their headquarters across, and they've got money, and therefore they can speed things up. But most people haven't got that sort of that resource to throw at a problem, and so you have to grow it organically, and therefore strategic thinking and making strategic decisions become more and more important. And so if you look at some of the very large multinationals that are already there, they have been there for years. They have been there for at least 20, 30, 40 years even. Some of them might have been there for 100 years if you look at HSBC and the like. And they've grown. But the key, I suppose, is that they've made that strategic decision. We want to grow in that market. And because they've made that decision, it makes it easier to move forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Kylie, thank you very much for your time today. It's been fascinating to talk about it, and just a brief insight for our members to see what is available in Southeast Asia, and that how you are so ideally placed in order to assist them in their endeavours in that particular region. So your details will be on the website, and so there'll be the email and the phone number if you want to contact Kylie. I'm sure you'll be very happy to take calls and assist wherever you possibly can. So Kylie, thank you very much for your time, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks very much.